I'm standing at the entrance to the historic Methodist cemetery in Baltimore City called Mount Olivet. My name's Duncan Hodge, a member of the Board of Trustees of Lovely Lane United Methodist Church and also of Mount Olivet Cemetery. The story starts in the early 1800s in Baltimore City, when Baltimore City Station and its daughter churches had 3 cemeteries in Baltimore. The city needed the space to expand and build new roads, so the trustees had to find a place to move the folks that were resting in the city, and they would have to move. They purchased 50 acres of the Montpelier estate on what was then Frederick Turnpike and is now Frederick Avenue. Interestingly enough, where the gatehouse stands now was one of the toll stations for the Frederick Turnpike. Now we're in the oldest section of the graveyard. This is section A, and it's actually farthest from the gate. And this is one of the sections where people were moved from burial grounds in Baltimore City after those grounds were closed and this one had been opened. Most of the gravestones in this area are very old. Many of them are soft marble or sandstone, so much of the lettering has disappeared. It's really difficult to find the ones with death dates prior to 1845. We have records of over 200 such grave sites in this area, but I was only able to find one where one can clearly read the lettering and the death date. This monument to the Pumphrey family shows the records recording the earliest death of Ebenezer Pumphrey in 1829. And remember, this cemetery was only opened in 1845, so clearly his remains were moved here and moved from one of the other cemeteries in Baltimore City. And now we're in the part of the cemetery which, for those of us with no ancestors buried here, is the most significant part of Mount Olivet. It's an area called the Bishop's Lot. This was a piece of land that in 1854 the trustees of the cemetery and Baltimore City Station donated to the Baltimore Conference for the, and I'm quoting, traveling preachers and their wives, if they would like to be buried here. The trustees erected and dedicated a large bishop's monument. Near the top was a shield inscribed with the words, Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be glory, replicating a similar inscription on the tablet to the memory of John Wesley in London. Unfortunately, the original monument deteriorated and became unsafe, so in 2016, the 200th anniversary of the death of Francis Asbury, this new granite monument, inscribed with the names and life stories of 4 early American bishops, Francis Asbury, Enoch George, John Emery, and Beverly Waugh, whose remains are all buried here, was installed in its place. Bishop Thomas Coke died and was buried at sea. A memorial to him, made from a piece of the old obelisk, was added in 2016 also. There are wayside markers on the roadway at the top, providing the stories of the early Methodist luminaries. The Bishop's Lot also contains the remains and a rather lovely monument to Robert Strawbridge and his wife. He came here in the 1760s, was the first Wesleyan Methodist lay preacher, and organized the first Methodist society in America. Close by, also in the Bishop's Lot, is the burial site of Jesse Lee, who was known as the Apostle to New England Methodists, an early Methodist historian, and as chaplain to the U.S. House and Senate, and a more recent, highly acclaimed Methodist, Reverend E. Stanley Jones. He was raised in Baltimore. Immediately after graduating college, he was sent on a mission to India, where he would become world-renowned as a missionary. He was an inspiring friend to many of the leaders who brought independence to India, and was awarded the Gandhi Peace Prize in 1961. At his request, his ashes are divided between India and Mount Olivet. Coincidentally, and I think this is a wonderful completion of a circle, his father was one of the toll takers on the Frederick Turnpike, on which this cemetery is located. There are many other graves in the Bishop's Lot, but there's also a Methodist time capsule. It contains, and I quote, articles of historic significance. It was placed here in 1966 to celebrate that Robert Strawbridge was the first Wesleyan Methodist lay preacher, and to celebrate the year 1766, when Philip Embry began preaching in New York. It's to be opened in 2066. If you were in Baltimore on July 4th or New Year's Eve, when the city puts on a big firework display down at the Inner Harbor, this is the place to be. It's a wonderful little hill with a great view of downtown, and you don't have to fight the traffic afterwards. In Victorian times, when the cemetery was established and was very active, it was the fashion to take a picnic and come out on a Sunday afternoon in your best clothes, visit the family graves, but also to enjoy the country air. The cemetery was 3 miles outside the city limits and had the feel of a country estate. And so people came out here to enjoy this country air and country estate feel for their Sunday afternoon picnics. So we're now in the area of the cemetery called the Jesse Lee Circle. This is one of the areas of the cemetery that in the late 1800s and early 1900s was considered the most prestigious part of the cemetery. You'll see, in addition to the orange Jesse Lee monument behind me, there are also very elaborate monuments to demonstrate the very elaborate family graves that were positioned here because of the prestige and of the view. The view from here goes all the way out to the bay, and now you can see the Francis Scott Key Bridge, but of course that wasn't part of the view back in the day. Right behind me is the handsome orange monument made of Scottish granite, honoring Jesse Lee. This was erected in 1876 by the New England Methodists, celebrating the 86th anniversary of his first sermon under the old elm on Boston Commons in 1790. So this modern sign was installed in 2016 when the new monument up in the Bishop's Lot was replaced. And it tells you on the sign, about 40,000 folks have been buried here at Mount Olivet Cemetery. Many people from this country and from all over the world come to visit. Today, Mount Olivet is still receiving burials, and we do have lots for sale. We welcome visitors at any time and would love to have you come and take a look at the cemetery and see in more detail all the things I've been talking about. Thank you for watching and listening.